And one more thing, really quick. If for some reason, I just like to let my guests know this, you're thinking about it and you're like, oh, I don't really want that aired, always let me know. We'll get it edited out.
Okay.
Okay. If that comes up, I just like to let you guys know that.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Hello, hello, kings and queens and everybody in between. Welcome back to another episode of the Goddess Complex. I'm Ashley Michelle, your lovely host. And as we make our way into the witchy season, I have yet another amazing guest for you all. So, this guest today is actually one of my bodybuilding coaches. You all know I've been on this crazy bodybuilding journey the last few months. And earlier in the year, I had Julia Renee, if you remember that. This is her lovely partner, Zach, who has also been working with me. And some of you may have caught that I chose these two because they have a spiritual undertone in everything they do in the fitness world. And I loved it. You guys know that. I love it. A witch always needs a witch. So it was my honor and my pleasure to invite Zach here today. And with that, I'm going to let you introduce yourself to the people. Who are you? Where you're from? What do you do? What's your magic?
Oh, kings and queens and everything in between. I love it. Or everybody in between.
You.
Uh, well, who am I? I would first say that I'm a honest and integrous, graceful, loving man.
Mhm,
I've come to that state of being by doing a lot of work on myself, but also by learning through my experiences with others, being led, being a follower, being a leader. And through that, the way that I would describe the work I do is liberation training, maybe soul liberation training.
I would agree.
And the best way to describe that is that it's a process of transforming from your conditioned self
Mm,
and realigning with who you really are. So it's a
mhm,
process of self-remembrance so that you can
mhm,
condition yourself to your soul. And through that, your authenticity comes forward, your gifts come forward, and your impact and influence on this world becomes magnified by the light that you shine.
mm. Condition yourself to your soul. Let's eke that out a little bit. What does that
Sure.
mean for those that are listening?
So, conditioning can be defined as a way of um, training a person or an animal to
Mhm,
act in a certain way by external or environmental influence.
mhm,
So, the most famous study of conditioning is Pavlov's dogs. All right, so
mhm,
he conditioned dogs to salivate to a bell by ringing a bell and then putting out food. And then eventually he would just ring the bell and he wouldn't pull out food. So he would the dogs would salivate. Now,
mhm,
what I like to say is we've all been conditioned to salivate at certain things that
mhm,
aren't really authentic to who we are.
mhm,
And conditioning is used intentionally because it's a neutral statement. You could
mhm,
also use this in a say of saying like generational trauma or
mhm,
generational curses. But both of
mhm.
those words have a very strong energetic charge to them that implies
Right,
bad.
right.
And when something is implying bad, typically there's an emotional response of the guilt and the shame of these things, and also feeling as if you're a victim to your upbringing. So conditioning comes into play of taking away from the emotional charge and putting it into a neutral space of saying, no, I've just been conditioned to be a certain way by my parents, by my teachers, by my friends growing up, by my friends'
Right.
parents growing up,
Mhm,
by church leaders, by whoever I chose to listen to and accept their ideology as my own.
mhm, mhm,
And then eventually you get to a point where you realize that the ways that you've been conditioned are causing you to suffer internally because it's
mhm,
not aligned with who you actually are.
mhm,
And typically, the conditioning that we experience is unloving, not intentionally, but it's not aligned with the true nature of unconditional love. And so anything other than unconditional love is going to create some sort of distortion of pain,
Hmm.
and a distortion of love that prevents us from really being what we are naturally, which is
Hmm.
unconditional love.
Right, right. Oh, you guys see why I like them. I love it. I love it. I love it. Um, So let's flesh all this out a bit more because, we're in the age of Aquarius, we're in the age of technology, everything's going virtual, and we're also in the age of coaches, of mentors, of online groups, of programs, and a huge boom in the fitness industry. Everybody's in their fit girl era, right? And so when most people are ingesting content around fitness, they don't get this magic, this juice that you're giving right now.
Mhm.
Why do you think that is? And I guess to put it even more direct, why do you think the way that I see it is it feels like there's this weird disconnect between the physical vessel and health and fitness and the spiritual body and what health and wellness looks like? Um, that I personally have been trying to bring it back together because I've lost a shit ton of weight and I wouldn't have been able to do it without that spiritual healing and work that I'm still doing. And you seem so in tune to it. And why aren't we seeing more people doing that?
Well, to speak to most fitness influencers that are just using their body as an example for somebody else to be inspired by,
Mm,
it's coming from a place of what we consider, like, I'll use this term as the ego mind, but it's really just the identifying mind. So what
mm-hmm,
by the identifying mind is that we witness something in our environment and then we start identifying with wanting that thing.
mm,
It's very easy to identify with somebody else's body shape that's in shape and to say, I want
right.
that body. So
Mm-hmm,
it's very shallow in that way because to
yeah.
get to that place for some people, they don't really know the journey, the hardships, the challenges, um, the emotional toll that it takes to get to these bodies, especially in the body.
Mm-hmm, right.
And sometimes the enhancement of using steroids or any
Mm-hmm,
other type of enhancements to look a certain
mm-hmm,
way. So the identification then moves into comparison.
mm-hmm.
And comparison in the shadow is, why can't I look like that? I want to
Yeah,
look like that, but I'm not good enough to look like that. So it
yeah.
creates this relationship of not feeling good enough, and so not even
Mm-hmm.
taking a step forward into focusing on themselves because they're still focused externally on what they're not.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the step of saying, okay, I admire this body. I'm inspired by this body. So now I'm going to take a step forward to build my own body in this way. But it's
Mm-hmm.
still coming from the shallowness of I just identifying with how I want my body to look, rather than
Right.
the spiritual component would be, well, how do I want to feel about myself?
Yeah, that part. Yeah.
So we like fitness because, I mean, I love fitness because of it's a shuttle. It's like the first step into real
Yeah.
authentic self-discovery. It can be.
Yeah.
It'll also just bring people to the point of their resistance points, their fears, their edges. And some people
Yeah.
choose not to move through those resistances.
Mm-hmm.
They stay in the box. And Julia, my partner, and myself both have the same story. I've been like 6% body fat, was still in the middle of porn addiction, was in the middle of like a potential divorce, and absolutely hated
Mm-hmm.
myself. Even though
Mm.
if somebody looked at me, they'd be like, "Dude, you look incredible." And I'm like,
Like you got it all. Yeah.
but really, I was suffering on the inside.
Mm-hmm. Why don't you compete anymore?
So personally, I don't compete because for men to compete at a high level and to become a pro, and I'm sure there is the rare soul that can do it without enhancing themselves with steroids.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was doing steroids. I was doing steroids
Mm-hmm.
30, 31, 32, and they're a lot of fun to be on in a sense of working in the gym and seeing the results, but it
Yeah.
it wasn't something that once I had my own spiritual awakening, I realized the damage that it was doing to my body and ultimately the damage
Mm-hmm.
that it was doing to my spirit. Uh,
Right.
I like to describe steroids as, have you ever seen the Captain America movies by chance?
Yeah, Captain America is not really my jam, but I
Okay.
can imagine.
So what I'll say is in those movies, there's a super soldier serum.
Mm,
And the German scientist that's about to give it to Steve Rogers says the serum only amplifies who you are.
mm,
So he gave the serum to the bad guy and it made the bad guy worse, which is like the Red
mm.
Skull, who is who Captain America fights against. But because Captain America had a good heart, it made him good, like
Even
better.
good. Yeah.
Now, that's a simplistic way of doing it, but what it does is it amplifies your anger, it amplifies your triggers, it amplifies your unworthiness feelings, it amplifies all these things, but it also doesn't give you an opportunity to consciously think about how to heal from those things.
Mm,
Because it also makes it so that you are very egoic and you're very focused on your body and you're very shallow.
right.
So then
Yeah.
that's what I was experiencing. I was like, I'm angry at my partner. I'm more anxious attached than I'm typically am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so worried about what people think about me. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm using it as that type of tool. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, that wasn't a life that I wanted to continue to live. And
Mm-hmm.
at that point, I stopped competing myself, but I was still coaching bodybuilders to do the same thing. And I was
Right.
witnessing this happen in their life as well. I've had a couple of
Right.
bodybuilding men that were with me that literally went through a divorce, had porn addiction, everything. It was like me.
Wow.
And I was like, I also don't feel comfortable contributing to continuing to give this to others. So then that's what
Right.
step away from bodybuilding coaching initially about 4 years ago.
Tell me about your spiritual awakening.
So I would first start with like when I was 30, and I call this more of a mental awakening. So when I was 30,
Mm-hmm.
I was married. I got divorced during that time. Also, my 16-year porn addiction came to light, which
Mm,
was a contributor to the divorce. Uh,
right.
Ultimately, my ex-wife told me she left me not because of the porn, but she left me because I lied to her. I was manipulating her. I was controlling her, which
Wow.
this person in addiction does. They lie about the
Right.
addiction. They manipulate people to not see it. They control people to not see it.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, I left you because I can't trust you.
Mm,
So that opened up my mind because I was literally either going to, I had suicidal ideation at that time. So I was either
mm-hmm.
going to run my truck off the side of the road or go get a gun and put a bullet in
Mm-hmm.
my head.
Yeah.
Or I was going to start questioning things.
Right.
So I'll actually tell you the story of the two questions that drove me to who I am today, in a sense of the curiosity and the stories with it.
Yeah.
I was leaving the gym. Me and my ex-wife are leaving the gym, and she grabs my hand and she says, "We need to talk."
Mm,
And anybody who knows, those four words knows that, hey, this is a serious conversation that's going to come forward in the relationship.
yeah.
For me, I pretty much had an anxiety attack then because I had been hiding this addiction and not well. Like I knew that she
Mm-hmm.
knew, but ultimately I didn't want to have the conversation.
Right.
So she grabs my hand. We get to the car, and she asked to see my phone. She said, "Let me see your phone." And I reluctantly gave it to her. And then she goes to my in private browsing, and this is 2017 and an Android. Sometimes I get people that's in private browsing doesn't save. It does when you're an addict and you watch the same thing over and over again.
Right.
So she goes to in private browsing, she clicks the search bar, and like things start showing down of what I've been
Mm-hmm.
searching. And these are things that I would never want anybody to know about me except for
Right.
in my shadow.
Right.
And she says, "What's this?" And I say, "I don't know. That wasn't me." And she
Mm,
says, "This is your phone. Who else
right.
could it be?"
Mm-hmm.
And a second time I denied it. I said, "I don't know. Somebody hacked my phone. It wasn't me."
Um,
Now, after the second time denial, a voice woke up inside of me coming from my heart and it said really loudly, it said, "Tell her the truth. Tell her the truth."
mhm,
And third time she says, "Look, if you don't tell me the truth right now, I'm going to leave you. Was this you?"
mm,
And third time denial, I said, "It wasn't me." But then right after I said that, I immediately started breaking down crying. I said, "But I did watch that." So it was the first time that I became aware of this duality. And I
Mm-hmm.
was driving home from this point, and this is where I was had the suicidal ideation, where I was like, oh, I can go to a sporting goods store and all these things. Is as I'm thinking about killing myself,
Yeah.
the voice wakes up again and asks a question and says, "Who's listening?" I
Mm.
said, "Who's listening?" Okay, that's interesting. Who is listening to these voices that
Right.
are inside of me, right? So that curiosity kept me from killing myself during that time. It really saved me.
Yeah.
That was God speaking through me.
Yeah.
About 4 weeks later, I'm starting to work on things. I'm seeing a sex therapist and an anxiety therapist, and she comes home. And my ex-wife could be classified as anxious avoidant, and I was
Mm.
anxious attachment. So I
Mm.
could tell that something was wrong. And I was like, hey, what's wrong? What's going on? And I kept pushing her, not physically, but just like verbally and emotionally.
Wanting to know. Yeah.
Wanted to know to the point where she locked herself in our closet. So
Mm.
I'm sitting on the other side of the closet door and I'm pleading with her. I'm like, please don't leave me. Don't leave me. I'm working on it. And then all of a sudden she swings open the door and she yells out, I want to die. And
Mm.
she starts running for the kitchen, presumably to grab a knife. And
Right.
I see what's happening and I get up really fast and then I go and I put myself in the door frame and I look at her. And as I'm looking at her, it was like I was watching a movie of all the choices
Yeah.
we had made that led up to that moment where the person that I had pledged my life to, the person that I had pledged my heart to, that I love so much, wanted to kill herself because of how I had
Yeah.
shown. And I said, please don't do this. Please don't do this. I'll go. I'll go. So after the situation diffused, I was sitting on the couch and again distraught, and the voice woke up again.
Mhm.
It said, who's watching?
Mm.
So if you're the guy that's living this life, who is the one that was just watching your life as if you're watching a movie and you're the character? Who's
Mm.
watching?
Right.
So so I've done all my healing around these experiences, and so has my ex-wife. We actually had a very healing experience as we got through this. She had attracted a pattern of emotionally abusive, physically abusive men. She thought I was different. I wasn't. I was the white knight in shining armor. All the perceptions that create the pain that isn't really
Oof. The perceptions that create the pain. Say it louder for the people in the back. Mm.
like that create false realities, right?
Right. Right.
And who's listening and who's watching is what drove me into curiosity. So that's when I started learning about like subconscious remapping and epigenetics and neuroplasticity and all the things of science of why I was addicted
Mm-hmm.
and what happened. That
Mm-hmm.
opened up my mind to a deeper spiritual awakening when I was 33, where I actually started to, like, I used to say I'm getting downloads from the universe. And then I started to
Mm-hmm.
realize that the downloads weren't coming from outside of me, that this voice inside of me was actually my soul,
Yeah.
that my intuition now had a voice.
Yeah.
And that voice was very persistent in me being honest and me
Yeah.
graceful and me being integrous. Um, And then in this last year, and there's so much inside of this, but in this last year, I started to go through initiations.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody is familiar with gene keys as a learner,
Mm-hmm.
I have Grace, which is gene key 22, as a double inside of my profile.
Can
And
you elaborate or quickly define gene keys for my listeners who might not be familiar?
yeah, so Gene Keys is a blend of the Chinese I Ching and human design. The I
Okay.
Ching are basically 64 different, let's call it ways of being from the shadow to the Siddhic state. Shadow being, what it is when you're unconscious, gift being what it means to transmute that, and the Siddhic
Mm-hmm.
state being that you become an empty vessel or avatar for the divine to be through you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so inside of that, the Grace Key has 9 planetary initiations that it describes behavior. It describes behavior in a neutral way so that you can populate your experiences to it. And then this past year, I've went through 8 of the 9 initiations to the T of what that looks like.
Mm.
With that has come a lot of cleansing of my body, a lot of purging of energy that was associated with like shame and guilt and
Mm-hmm.
all the things in my past, and also that I've reached a couple of acidic states in a sense of what I can do with my spiritual gifts and how source works through me and flows through me in different situations.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm. I love it. Thank you so much for being so goddamn open. It's very appreciated here.
Yeah.
I, how do you define the divine masculine? It's a buzzword.
It is a
The
buzzword.
divine masculine, the divine feminine. I want to go into buzzwords and your thoughts.
So the divine masculine and the divine feminine are the same thing.
Right.
They're balanced. So a divine masculine presence, to me, these are the virtues of a divine masculine, which is honest, integrous, responsible, but
Hmm.
also loving, graceful, compassionate, forgiving. And for a divine feminine, integrous, honest, responsible, graceful, loving, compassionate. Um, we've seen the polarity of gender, men and women, start to become extreme in swings
Yeah.
throughout the 1900s. I mean, the feminist movement had to occur because of the patriarchal society of men that had created this entire matrix that we find ourselves
Hmm.
that suppressed women. So
Yeah.
had to come out in a way that was more intense for that to be integrated, just like your own
Yeah.
shadow. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
the racial equality of the 70s, it
Hmm.
had to come out in
Right.
violence for
Right.
it to be integrated, right? And we're still
Hmm.
working on integration. You can think about like
Yeah.
if you guys ever been through a medicine journey, like the
Hmm.
medicine is the intense experience of what occurs, and then there's the
Hmm.
fusing of the integration afterwards. So as a
Hmm.
society, as a race, collectively, we're still integrating these things that experienced
Right.
in the past.
Right.
But ultimately now a lot of the feminist movement has swung too far to the right, where like all
Mm.
men have become evil.
Evil.
Where you
Yeah.
know, where it's like, well, that's not true, but you need to experience all men being evil because that's
Hmm.
something that's inside of you that needs to come out and be experienced so that you can see that
Yeah.
it's not true.
Yeah.
And for men, men need to experience what it's like to be more feminine,
Hmm.
to integrate feminine energy. And a lot
Yeah.
of men have created like think about Andrew Tate. Some people are so against it that they've literally created such a strong protection mechanism around that.
Yeah.
Men have swung to the other side because they're like, nah,
Hmm.
nah, I'm not going to be that, right? Well, they need to experience
Right.
the pain of not being seen,
Right. Right.
and then they'll swing back. So we're just in this massive balancing period of making, something that we talked about at the retreat, the principle of rhythm.
Hmm.
We've been hanging
Hmm.
out in the middle, accepting what is. And we got to swing
Hmm.
to the left so that we can swing to the right. And after we swing multiple times, we'll find back balance of what it actually means to be a divinely integrated being,
Right.
where
In
they're
equilibrium.
in equilibrium.
Yeah. So you kind of touched on this, but I'd love to go deeper. Why do you think? So obviously, the spiritual community, I've been calling it a spiritual revolution, right? People are into this and they're finally picking up what so many of us have been putting down for many years. You and I are very close in age, and so with that being said, still it's very heavily female dominant. And whenever we see a man in here doing their big one in this world, we're like we want to hang on to you because it's so rare and so beautiful to see a man unafraid and unabashedly themselves in this spiritual world, and they're like down with the woo, you know um why do you think that is, and do you see in the near future more men coming into this world and not being so fearful of their feelings, of their intuition, of their chakra system, of their auric field, of really like getting away from what they think they're supposed to be. And just to add to this really quickly, I feel bad for you guys. Men, like the patriarchy has done a number on women and it has done a number on men. And you every day have to show up or feel like you have to show up in a specific way, or you're not a man. Or, you're not making more than your partner, you're not a man. You're not big and brawly, you're not a man. All of these ways to tear men down into thinking that they're less than. And of course, it happens in the female community. but I think we've made more progress than y'all have so far.
So I'll speak to first the overarching distortion that I see that is hurting the spiritual community, whether we're men or women. Uh, there's this idea of we,
Mm-hmm.
and this idea of we has become a mask for not taking responsibility, for deferring responsibility to the collective,
Mm. Oof.
rather than taking responsibility for becoming the I.
Yeah.
So if you were to take the entire population of humans and just
Mm-hmm.
imagine that they form a capital I,
Mm-hmm.
well, for you to be a part of the capital I, you have to become your own capital I. And then
Mm-hmm.
you become a piece of this big capital I. And then that capital I is a we technically, but it's still an I.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of the spiritual community isn't an I yet,
Yeah.
but they think that they are by saying we. And so they
Yeah.
don't unlock their gifts. And so they don't make money doing what they love.
Mm-hmm.
And so they
Mm-hmm.
feel the pain of the collective and they don't do anything about it except for
Mm-hmm.
blame the patriarchy for what's going on.
Yeah.
So there's a fear that if you become I, that is egoic. And that's
Mm.
not true.
You're probably triggering so many people listening right now. Stay with us, friends. This is good.
and and that's not true because ultimately oneness happens within you first. You
Yeah.
become one with the I that's within you, and then you
Mm-hmm.
then can be attracted or can build the capital I of everything else. But really, again, the we is a fear. It's a fear
Mm-hmm.
of confronting your shadow. It's a fear of taking responsibility. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the biggest thing that I wanted to stay first there. Now, secondly, this
Mm-hmm.
move into new earth vibration is a move into love, unconditional love,
Mm-hmm.
transparency,
Mm-hmm.
compassion,
Mm-hmm.
um, empathy, and
Mm-hmm.
these are feminine qualities. So
Yeah.
women naturally come into this world in a feminine vessel,
Mm-hmm.
and the patriarchy has put the responsibility to be the breadwinner, to be the
Mm.
provider, the provisionary, and the men. So they don't have as much time to sit with their intuition.
Right.
Not that women have not been swept up into the masculine, because I work with a lot of
Right.
women who have again, right? But ultimately,
Mm-hmm.
women are intuitive, and this is an intuitive density or dimension that we are ascending into.
Mm-hmm.
It's backwards. So we've come from a dimension or I call it a density, meaning that like the amount of light that the body can hold. And
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, we're coming from a place where the mind has served the environment and told the heart what to do.
Mm-hmm.
This next level is the mind starts serving the heart and listening to the heart. So the heart
Mm-hmm.
becomes the one that's in control. So it's completely backwards energetically from what's been occurring. Women are already naturally in touch with their intuition and their emotions. Men are in the learning curve right now of learning how to get out of their mind of control and to surrender
Mm-hmm.
to their soul, the wisdom of their soul, which ultimately is actually the creator speaking through them, so that they
Mm-hmm.
become the I. So that's why I would say is we don't see a lot, but I would also tell you that the environment is dependent on that, because here in Austin, I'm around a lot of men that are very integrated men. Colin that was at the retreat, he's a neo emotional
He's
release.
an angel.
He helps other men release emotion. So like I actually have
Mm-hmm.
the privilege and the honor of being around a lot of men in Austin because
Mm-hmm.
of the environment that's there. So it
Right.
really has that dependency to it as well. But I do agree with you that there is a majority of women that are awakening at a faster rate than men are.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know, by the time this comes out, if you remember a few months back, I talked about going on a much needed retreat. Zach was the leader of this retreat. And it's so funny, friends. I found out about Zach and his belief system and all the shadow work after I signed on with them. You guys know I'm a shadow worker. Sometimes this is just how it's supposed to happen, which is what I love. I have a question.
I'll do my best to answer.
It's polarizing.
Let's go.
Okay, so here in Austin, Texas, I need to know a few things here. A, have you heard of this underground spiritual theory that Trump is a light worker? And if so, what are your thoughts on it?
I haven't heard the theory.
Okay, it's a wild one.
Okay. I
That's all I'm gonna say.
yeah. Um, I don't trust either party. I don't
Hmm.
subscribe to the world stage that we're being influenced to look at. Uh,
Yeah,
the new
yeah.
Earth society is not going to be built by the governmental structures that currently exist. And any attempt to feel that either person that gets put into office is going to actually make a change for the people is just you being swept up into the maelstrom of lies that you've been fed pretty much your entire life.
Ooh, you better say it. I fully
So
agree.
if I was looking at a candidate that I would vote for, it would be RFK Jr. because he's
Mm,
actually bringing forward the corruption and the oligarchy and everything else.
mm,
Now, whether or not I believe he can do something about it when he gets in office,
right,
I can't speak to that. But what
right,
I
right,
can
right.
say is that if you look at the history of the Republican Democrat Party, so I'm a history major actually from college.
Oh, really? Fun fact.
Yeah, they have swapped policies over time, multiple times. Matter of
Mm,
fact, the Democrats just in the 1990s, Bill Clinton was running on getting out of the wars that George W. Bush had created and focusing on the
hmm
economy. And we saw a massive increase in our economy, and the middle class was actually helped.
mm,
Obama runs on the same principle, but then prolongs the wars. Now Trump is
mm,
running on the principle to stop having the wars, and Biden prolonged the wars. They flip-flop every single time just to try and create
right.
the illusion that one's going to do something better than the other. And the truth
Hmm.
of the matter is that our national debt has gotten bigger under every president.
Yeah, sure
And
has.
they say, well, it's the most under this president. Well, it's cool. So it was 9 trillion under you, and it was 3 trillion. It was
Hmm.
still $3 trillion that nobody. It's like this comparison of contrasting of just psychosis.
Yeah, yeah.
So my personal intuitive feeling, and this isn't necessarily a butterflies and rainbows feeling, is that it's going to take the governments to essentially lead us so astray, and to also watch the system crumble from beneath itself. And then us light workers or those that have more of a unity and service to others mindset come forward and say,
Hmm.
"Hey, what you guys have been doing isn't working. You
Right.
don't have any power over us to tell us any different because it's
Hmm.
becoming more and more ridiculous over time. The circus is getting
Right.
clowny." Uh,
Yeah.
and then ultimately, we're going to be able to bring forward the new society in what it's meant to be. But it's
Hmm.
going to like that story alone is going to cause a lot of pain and suffering for a lot of people in the process, which I don't wish upon.
Right.
But it's just what I intuitively feel will occur.
Yeah, yeah. I couldn't have said it better myself. You said it so eloquently. I have always made a point to stay away from political speak within my work because it's so polarizing. And this year I've been feeling this call to speak on it, and not only to speak on it, but to pick other people's brains in this universe about it. Because like you said, I think now more than ever, people are going to be looking to their spiritual worker for some sort of guidance because shit is getting wild out here in these streets. And all we can do is hold space. So I appreciate you speaking on that.
Yeah.
Speaking of retreat, let's talk about it. So I'm a firm believer that everybody should travel, everybody should do a spiritual retreat, even if you're not really into the woo. I think they're just absolutely fantastic. I want to start here. What made you even want to hold a retreat? Because it's so different from your work. Like, you create my workout programs, you do my macros for me, you know? And then, like, you're leading this retreat that has nothing to do with the macros. And it's really about the healing, and like, the physical body is there, but that's not what we're here to do. We're here to do spiritual soul cleansing. And I just greatly appreciate it. And I think more people need your type of medicine when it comes to fixing the physical. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. So to come back to the story of leaving bodybuilding coaching when I was 33,
Hmm.
34. The first thing I did was because I started integrating like meditation and visualization and mindfulness strategies into my bodybuilding team.
Hmm.
Actually, I started to, there was a rumor going
I kind
around
of
that
love that.
my bodybuilding team was a cult. So like other bodybuilding would call me a cult
I
leader, which was funny.
I kind of love that.
Yeah. Um, but I started to witness the increase in performance and the decrease in stress and anxiety. So I was like, well, I really want to
Hmm.
bring these tools to the leadership world, so entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So
Okay, right.
I then found this terminology called emotional intelligence. So I was like, oh yeah, that's
Hmm.
essentially what I'm doing is doing emotional intelligence. So I worked with a lot of entrepreneurs, executives, CEOs in that capacity. Um, and did so with I would moderate success.
Yeah.
I never ascended to Tony Robbins or anything like that, but
Yeah.
I was able to start making the impact in the way that I enjoyed. And
Right.
along that journey, I met a gentleman who became a trainer for me and a guide for me to show me how to run essentially experiential processes that you got to experience
Hmm.
inside of the retreat uh,
Hmm.
that would bring forward unconscious or shadow behavior and thoughts and emotions into the light
Hmm.
and do so in a way that also could create healing in that space. So it's like we're going to trigger you, but then we're going to actually heal the trigger.
I
And
was triggered, friends. I was fucking triggered. We'll talk about that later.
and
But we're happy now.
and that's actually how healing occurs. So he gave me a
Yeah.
model for that, and essentially what he instilled in me was is that I've been teaching people about, let's just say, integrity for a long time.
Hmm.
I teach integrity. I say integrity is you do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. And you listening might say, "Oh yeah, I know that." But I would say, well, maybe you just understand that that's what that means. You won't
Hmm.
know it until I create a scenario or a container to find out
Hmm.
whether or not you're in integrity to your word.
Right, right,
And
right,
that's
right.
that's experience. So that's
I'm
actually
putting things together now that we experienced on the retreat. That I'm putting things together now. That's crazy. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so
Huh.
experience is what creates knowing. Concept is just understanding a concept. The way that I could sit
Hmm.
in a more grounded way is I could say I could sit in this chair and I could read every single spiritual development book, personal development book, emotional intelligence book on the planet. It could take me 70 years. I would die in this chair thinking I knew everything, but would have experienced nothing. So
Yeah,
without the experience, I actually don't know what it is. So that is the somatic integration into the body. Once you have the physical vehicle has the experience of it, now it knows.
right,
There's a difference between knowing and understanding.
right.
So then that integration happens at a very fast rate. So it's like concept integration, concept integration, concept integration. So
Hmm.
we're collapsing time on experiences that you may have out in the world and then compressing it into 3 days. And then in that 3 day container, or for you, you did a 2 day container,
Hmm.
being able to, collapse time on healing as well and self awareness and really finding that deeper level of purpose inside of yourself
Hmm.
so that you go back out into the world with a new set of, I talked about this at the retreat, but it's like, you have a new set of glasses on. And the
Hmm.
glasses are more aligned with reality rather than the perceptions that causes pain.
Right, right.
So,
Mm.
so I learned this from him, and that brought me to this.
Yeah,
And so I was with this gentleman for a year, doing these type of trainings without the medicine, without psilocybin. And then I was like, well, I really think if we added psilocybin, this could be a really powerful experience. Uh,
yeah.
so we stopped being partners this time, 2023 in March. Then I got back with me and Julia basically came together and created the Know Your Power.
Hmm.
I was like, okay, we can add this wing to it. And then now
Mm-hmm.
for me personally, like I'm coaching, I got like 4 or 5 clients right now that I coach
Mm-hmm.
one-on-one the same way that I've been doing for a long time. But
Mm-hmm.
now I really want to bring these retreats forward and have them, we're going to start every 2 months. Then it's about building a community around it. Then there's coursework and then there's coaching. And essentially, I want to build what I call fourth density society, which is just New Earth society, a pathway to integrating your soul and being. I don't like using the word ascended, but like ultimately, that's what we're discussing is
That is, yeah.
we're talking about ascending your vibration to a level of love
Mm-hmm.
so that you become a absolute creator of your reality.
Mm-hmm. Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah. So how many of these retreats have you done liberated?
That was the fifth one of this year. So
Yeah.
I started in January
The
and
fifth one of this year. You've been
yeah,
busy.
yeah.
Wow.
Every
Wow.
I was having them about every 6 weeks and then decided to slow down and now we're gonna go for every 8 weeks. So like I said, next
Yeah.
will be at the end of September. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
but we keep filling them and I'm just, at this point it's just a light and people that are attracted to the experience have been coming and
Can come in.
been relatively
Um,
easy.
the one thing that I reflected back to you at the retreat, and I think deserves some space here to say, is especially a lot of my listeners, we're very used to women run retreats. And I must say, friends that are listening, Zach's retreat, it was honestly, I believe, down the middle with female energy and male energy, or females and males, I should say. And there was a moment within the retreat where I was just hanging out and I just loved being around that male energy. There was no sexual connotation. There was no level of uncomfortability. I can't really put it into words, but all I can say is there was a deep level of love, and that mirror was in full action. And just watching these males interact with one another made my heart so fucking full. I could cry right now, but I'm going to bring it down. But it was such an amazing feeling. And I guess my question to you is when you began this journey of liberated, I know that you probably had done your own research and knew that a lot of people doing retreats were women, a lot of retreats were women only or men only, a lot of retreats were separated.
Mhm.
Did you want the vision of having something that was experienced together, or did it happen that way by accident?
No, I wanted the container to have both men and women. You don't heal trauma by avoiding the trauma.
Right, right, right.
So
Yeah,
if you want to heal wounding from men, you can't do it in a women's container.
yeah.
What you can do is you can talk about it. When I say so, let me make sure I define healing in this way. You
Okay.
can create resolve in a women's container. My definition of resolve is where you start to understand why the things happen to you.
Mm,
That feels good to be able to have support from women and to be able to say, oh,
mhm,
this is why, and also to be able to have some guidance on what to do going forward. Healing is release. So it's where you
mhm,
release the energy from the body. Well, the body is the vehicle that experiences. So if
mhm,
I have wounding from a man, and then
mhm,
I don't have the experience with a man that's different from the wounding that I experience, and I just
mhm,
avoid that experience, and that wounding is just suppressed. It's not healed.
mhm, mhm.
Now understand it, but it's not suppressed, or but it's
Right.
suppressed, it's not healed. The only way to
Mhm,
heal it is to put the physical body into a situation and have an experience with a man that differs from how you perceive men to be.
mhm,
And once you have that different perception, then that can allow for the body to release, whether it's crying,
mhm,
screaming, or maybe it's a really pleasant, joyful experience of feeling safe with him. And
mhm,
now you have a new experience. So the way I describe it is that if you were to like grab a glass of cold water and then you were to put that water down, you can still feel the cold in your hand. You're not holding
mhm.
the water, but you can feel it. So your body remembers the feeling of safety. And once it has
Yeah.
the feeling of the safety, now it has something to recondition itself to.
Right,
That
right,
not all men are bad, that there are
right.
good men out there, and that opening up that pathway to the realization that there are balanced, safe men out there, then starts to attract more balanced and safe men into your life
Like
rather
begets
than
like.
suppressing the repeated pattern of men that are showing up in a hurtful way.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it goes the same way from men to women and women to men.
Yeah.
I don't want to, I'm going to keep the container confidential, but there were men in the container that had done things to women in the past. That's the way I'll say it.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, there were women in the container that had had things done to them by men in the past,
Mm-hmm.
all in the
Mm-hmm.
same room and all doing the same sort of self-remembrance and shadow work and healing
Mm-hmm.
together. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I love it, because if we go back to the definition of divine feminine, divine masculine, just being a balanced, integrated being, that only happens with the presence of the opposite gender present with them.
That's exactly why I led with that question, because I wanted to get here. I have never felt so safe inside of a container like that. It was very, very, very magical in the best way. I just deeply enjoyed it. So, oh my God, I could go on and on. But anyways, where do you see your work going in the future? In the next 2 to 5 years,
Mhm.
where is Know Your Power? Where is Liberated? Where is Zach? Are you still coaching? Have you morphed into something different? What does that look like?
So it looks like me supporting Know Your Power. We're currently in the process of building. Like the whole intention is to build Know Your Power to the point where I can be more in an advisory role. So through that, we've actually hired somebody as an operations assistant that's taken over a lot of what I do. And to
Hmm.
be able to basically show up in an advisory and guidance in that way. That gives me the freedom to build, essentially, again, I'm calling it fourth density society or new earth society for now.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
that looks like community, that looks like doing deep healing inside of these retreats. It looks like providing guidance for people to become self-led and
yeah,
to be a capital I for themselves, so that they can experience, and when I say experience, I mean know oneness with inside of themselves,
right.
to activate their spirit, to activate their gifts, and to be able to go out as a light to impact and inspire the world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
I'd
yeah,
love to get my hands on your chart. Um, do you know the time you were born?
I do. I know it all.
Okay. I need it. I want to look at your chart. But for now, give the people your big three, sun, moon, and rising.
Okay, so I'm a Virgo sun, I'm a Cancer moon, and I am a Capricorn rising.
Okay. I love all that earth and that emotional body. The intuition is intuiting. Okay. I love that. And the hard worker too. Um, Gene keys for people that are intrigued by our conversation earlier on gene keys. Do you have any suggestions or advice on where they can go to get more information on that?
Yeah, so if they just Google gene keys, you can get what's called a hologenic profile. I
Okay.
think I'm saying that wrong. Hologenetic. There we go. Hologenetic profile.
Halogenetic.
You
Okay.
get that by putting in your birth time, your birthplace, and your birth date. And then it's going to give you this profile. The profile has different keys, which are numbers, and also these numbers have different, again, the shadow state, the gift state, and the acidic state. For instance, like my purpose key is divine will as acidic state, but the shadow is exhaustion, the gift is resolve, and then
Mm,
the acidic state is divine will. Now, that means something inside of Gene Keys where there's a book. So then the
hmm
book has different chapters based off each key. And what it does is it describes behavior in the shadow state in a neutral way and behavior in the gift state and behavior in the acidic state. And again, it allows you to populate your experiences to know how to transform your shadow into the gift by showing up differently in the world.
mm,
Now, if you go into Gene Keys, the gentleman name is Richard Rudd, who channeled through this information. So this is channeled information that he brought through. A channeled information, I don't know if you discussed it before, but essentially this
oh
is
yeah.
coming from coming from God, coming from
Right, right.
coming through this
Mm-hmm.
person as an instrument. And inside of that, this information I have found to be directly applicable to my own self-discovery, and unlocking my higher purpose, which is the intention for Gene Keys. Now, Gene Keys, they have guides, they have courses, they have all these different things. All I've done for myself personally, in my experience, is got my profile and listened to the book, and then started to connect what I need to connect to the process.
Okay.
Whatever somebody else needs to do is going to be based off how they intuitively feel they want to use Gene Keys in that way. But um, it's been one of the most impactful, it's been the most impactful learning tool for me. And then the most impactful book that I've brought is also a channeled work. It's called The Raw Contact: Teaching the Law of One. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
a lot of my um, teachings and integrations and things and strategies that I give were triggered, or the remembrance was triggered through this book and listening to this book and this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll link some stuff down below, fam. You know the drill. Zack, how can the people get your medicine? How can they work with you?
Yeah, so Instagram is the easiest way to contact me. It's the social media that I'm most active on. So
Okay.
nobody knows my name, at Zack Blakeney. So you can
And
just
we'll link it down below.
type that in. Send me a DM, and send me a DM that says, liberated. And
Hmm.
I'll know that you're coming from this show specifically, and
Okay, perfect.
be able to talk to you about it. I'm an open book even before anything. So like whatever you want to know about, you can ask whatever questions you'd like to ask. You can challenge any sort of things I've said on this show. I'll end with saying, in a sense, on to wrap up what I've talked about. Don't believe anything I say. Just be open to the possibility that if you go have the experiences of what I've talked about, you might know something. I'm not here to give you a new belief system. I'm more here as a guide so that you find what's true for yourself.
Hmm. I would very much agree with that.
Yeah. Liberated, the link is www.thepathinward.com/liberated. So
Okay.
that's
And we'll
the
have that down below too.
tools
And
that
so when is the next retreat and where is it?
it's September 27th to the 29th. It'll be here in Austin, Texas. It's actually going to be at the exact same location. I was able to book the same space. And
Okay, great.
yeah, I've already got one in, so like we're gonna fill
Yeah.
it. We typically
Yeah.
go more than 10 into the space. We had 8 with your group, but it's
Hmm.
still a very small and intimate group.
Hmm.
And also we have enough facilitators typically to where there's one facilitator for every 2 people, that
Hmm.
we have full coverage on what might occur inside of the medicine.
Yeah. Yeah. And there were women facilitators too.
Yep.
Yeah, amazing, amazing human beings. I appreciate it. So all of your info, Zach, will be listed down below. If any of you all have been thinking about a retreat or thinking about visiting Texas, which was beautiful, I highly suggest checking it out. 10 out of 10. And Zach, I love to ask my guests as we wrap it up this question. How do you define shadow work?
Bringing the unconscious to the conscious so that it can be released and your authentic self can be revealed to you.
I love it. I love it. And with that being said, I thank you so much for your time. This was so good. I think you're one of 2 males that's been on the Goddess Complex podcast. So, yes.
I'm honored.
So good, so good, so good. Friends, you already know the drill. Like the episode, share it with your friends, share it with your mama, share it on the gram, tag me, tag Zach, and don't forget to leave me that 5-star review. And I will see you in the next one. Ciao, ciao for now. Hello, friends. I hope you loved today's episode. Make sure you share it with a friend, share it with somebody that you love, and tag me on the gram at Ashley Michelle 90day and let me know your thoughts. Leaving that 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify is literally what helps this work get to the right people. As you may or may not know, we are in the middle of a spiritual revolution, and us being able to get our hands on resources like this podcast and others is what is literally going to make the world go round. So do me this favor and please leave me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and share the episode with somebody you love. It really, truly does mean the world to me. I love you so very much, and I will see you in the next one.